Kamala. So Kamala Harris had an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists. There's a couple of moments that I do want to touch on from the interview. We're not going to cover the entire interview, but I want to touch on the economy. I want to touch on gun rights, and I believe the other one is reparations. So let's start with the economy here. And remember, Donald Trump also had an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists as well. So they're interviewing both candidates. Let's go ahead and bring them in now.
Black men, as you know, are a closely watched voting bloc. You've hosted Black men at your residence.
Yep.
You have engaged Black men and centered them in your economic opportunity tour. But polling shows that some Black men, particularly young Black men, are considering voting for Donald Trump, and they see him as better for the economy. What is your message to young Black male voters who feel left out of this economy, and how can your economic policies materially change their lives?
So I have to admit, I was very surprised they asked this question, but it's a reality, right? So listen to what she says.
So I appreciate the spirit of the question, but I'll tell you, I've often been asked this question in a way that I've had to respond by first saying that I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that Black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am Black, but because the policies and the perspectives I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities. And I intend to be a president for all people.
I want to move to spring.
Let me pause there. So again, I was surprised they asked that question, but notice that she didn't push back. She didn't push back on that. Okay, that's not true or anything. Like one thing I will say is that she does acknowledge and does recognize that, yeah, it's a real issue where there are, multiple Black men, and I've heard from them myself, that are not willing to support her, that are willing to support Donald Trump because of his economic policies. I noticed, again, like I said, she didn't push back on that. She didn't say that's not true. Like she said, I have to work to earn their vote. So that tells you right there that she does realize that is a problem that her campaign has, and they're going to have to try to find a way to appeal to Black male voters. At this stage in the game, I mean, it's September. It's going to be October soon. She doesn't have a lot of time to do that, but I will give her credit for not denying it. I will say that. Now, they left off with economic plans. Like, how will your economic plans help them in some way, shape, or form? And that brings me to this part of the conversation here about the economy. I think she struggled a little bit here. Even David Weigel was on CNN. Even he said that she's not really answering this question. Listen to this.
We want to start on an issue that Americans across the country say is their number one concern, and that's the economy. A question that has been asked of you and everybody that's on the Democratic side is whether or not voters are better off now than they were 4 years ago. Are they better off now than they were 4 years ago?
So when we came into, well, first of all, let me just say it is.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why.
Clean up a mess.
I wanted you to hear that part. Hold on.
The worst public health epidemic in centuries. We came in after the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And a lot of it due in large part to the mismanagement by the former president as it relates to COVID and obviously January 6th. And we had then a lot of work to do to clean up a mess. As of today, we have created over 16 million new jobs, over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. We have the lowest Black unemployment rate in generations.
Let me pause here for a second. I just want to push back on one thing she said there about the job creation. Remember, even on CNN during the DNC 2024 DNC convention, even on CNN, they said it there where they were at the DNC and said that the jobs report, it was incorrect. They said that they were inflating the numbers. So those job numbers, she's still repeating those old job numbers. And even CNN said that they found out that those numbers weren't correct. They said that the Biden administration was fudging the numbers. So that needs to be fixed.
We have invested in small businesses, and they're to the benefit of many people, but including Black small businesses, some of the highest rate of creation of new Black small businesses in years. We have done the work of capping the cost of prescription medication for our seniors for issues like insulin. And again, I'm speaking to the Black journalists who care about all people, but in particular, I'll talk about the impact on Black people, where we know Black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. And we have now finally capped the cost of insulin for our seniors at $35 a month, capped the cost of prescription medication for our seniors at $2,000 a year because...
Pause. I need to touch on this insulin conversation here because there are people, members of my family, that have had to use insulin. So I just want to be very clear here. The problem I think she's running into with this part of the conversation is, again, they're asking about, are we better off now than we were 4 years ago? Economically, a lot of people would tell you no. I think that is something at this point in time that Kamala needs to just own it because she's a part of the current administration. Just own that and say, look, things have to improve. Things have to improve. Now, I am not stupid, and I totally understand that when they came into office, yes, the economy was already bad. We were in the pandemic. I get all that. A lot of people here lost their jobs. So I understand that. I think we all do. But the mess that you said you had to clean up, it shouldn't take you 4 years to do it. And also, there were some parts with the economy. Some of the bad that happened with the economy happened after you guys. So, for example, when we were talking about the inflation, that happened after you came in. When we were talking about the increase of the grocery prices, which is still a problem, that happened after. That wasn't the issue when Trump was in office. So you have to answer to some of those things that happened after you and Joe Biden took office. So the American people aren't stupid. Like, we all know that the economy was rough during 2020, like probably 2020 was around the height of the pandemic. So we all understand and acknowledge that, especially those of us that live in states that were locked down. I live in Massachusetts. Like, a lot of people lost their jobs here. A lot of businesses closed. So I totally get that. The problem is, though, it's been 4 years and there were things that happened after you got in office. So the insulin part, let's get to that. So she says that we cap the cost of insulin for seniors. Then she mentions that Black people, or 60%, are more likely to have diabetes. Okay, so unless I am a senior or unless I am a Black senior, your insulin cap doesn't apply to me. What about people who are born with diabetes? You know, people like that, people who are born diabetic. What about people who are not seniors? Those people didn't have their insulin price capped. So I'm not here saying they didn't do anything. They did do some things. But even when it came to insulin, when it came to prescription drugs, that should have applied to everybody, not just to seniors. You have kids out here just graduate college that are barely making enough to have their own apartment. They got to have like 3-4 roommates just to have a freaking apartment, at least over here on the East Coast. And these kids need help paying for prescription medication, paying for insulin. So we get it that you cap the price of insulin, but it was only for a certain segment of the population. What about all the rest of us? When are you guys going to do something for the other generations? When are you going to do something for Gen X, Gen Z, millennials? I'm a millennial. My generation is screwed. When are you going to do something for us? Let me let her finish.
As we unlike the former president who promised to do it, we finally have allowed Medicare to negotiate drug prices against the big pharma.
I don't know why this is, probably because sometimes when I have too many tabs.
Journalists who care. Because we, unlike the former president who promised to do it, we finally have allowed Medicare to negotiate drug prices against the big pharma.
I'm sorry, guys. Hold on.
That is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country, and to do the work that is about bringing some level of optimism and, dare I say, ambition about what I know is possible in our country. And so my plan for the economy includes what I imagine and believe and call an opportunity economy.
Okay, I don't know why this one keeps doing this, but you guys know what she's talking about when she says an opportunity economy. We've talked about that before, right? So hold on.
Just some of the accomplishments. Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Do we have more work to do? Yes. And I will tell you, I do believe that I offer a new generation of leadership for our country that is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country, and to do the work that is about bringing some level of optimism and, dare I say, ambition about what I know is possible in our country. And so my plan for the economy includes what I imagine and believe and call an opportunity economy. What we can do to grow an opportunity economy where all people have access to the resources to compete, to apply their incredible work ethic, their ambition, their aspirations, and their dreams, and actually not just get by, but get ahead. And I can talk in more detail about it, but specifically, I'll mention a few things.
Yeah.
One of the big issues that affects people right now in terms of the economy and their economic well-being is we have a shortage of housing supply. It's too expensive. People can't afford to buy a home. You know, we grew up, our parents, where they had the ability to somehow believe the American dream was attainable. Not so much for younger working people. And I recognize that. So my approach is a new approach, which is to say, let's just take this and deal with it head on. And part of my approach is to say, I'm going to employ and engage the private sector, in particular home builders with tax credits, to give them the incentive to create new housing, 3 million by the end of my first term, and understanding that not everybody is, handed a silver spoon, but works hard and is trying to save up for a down payment. Part of my plan under my opportunity economy is to give first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment assistance so they can just get their foot in the door.
So this number has changed. This has changed multiple times. First, she said it was a $25,000 down payment for first-time home buyers. Then later on, she came back and she said that was a tax credit after she got pushed back. On her website after that, it says up to $25,000. So Kamala Harris needs to clarify to people, is it up to 20? Because it is, just say that. If it's up to 25,000, say that. Because people will be mad at you. Because you're most likely right now, looking at the polls, it looks like she's probably going to win. And people are going to be kind of pissed at you. They find out, it was only up to 25,000. Because that's what it says on your website. So you might need to clear that up with people. So there's that. But when it comes to the housing issue, and we're talking about the economy, the reality is she already said it earlier on that the average American can't afford to buy a home. So it's great that you want to build homes, but if you know that the average American cannot afford to buy a home, even that $25,000 down payment, which I doubt is going to be $25,000 according to her website, that's not enough to get a home. There are no houses near me that you can get a house for a $25,000 down payment, which means you still have to have money saved to put towards the down payment. And don't listen, for those of you who are new, I went through the home buying process, so I know. I get emails about the real estate market every week. So I'm paying attention, and I know you can't get anything here for $25,000 down.
To be able to then engage in what will prove to be their opportunity to build intergenerational wealth. And here's my personal experience coming at that. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother was hardworking. She raised me and my sister Maya. She saved up. And it was only by the time I was a teenager that she could afford to actually buy her first home. And I know, and I identify with, I know where I come from.
Madam Vice President.
And I know, but I'm just going to finish. I know that so many people work so hard and should have the opportunity to just get their foot in the door. Again, so it's not just about getting by, but getting ahead. Please.
I'd like to ask you more about the opportunity economy. Housing is a part of it, as well as expanding the earned income tax credit, financial support, as you mentioned, for first-time buyers, and a $50,000 tax deduction for startups and small businesses. But I want to talk to you about the squeeze that millions of Americans are also dealing with that impacts their ability to work and make money, and that is childcare and elder care. And it's a squeeze for millions of people. In some parts of the country, it costs more for childcare than for rents. I think Bloomberg recently reported an average of $33,000 a year.
In the Boston, Cambridge, Somerville area here, it's $3,000 per child. So imagine if you had twins.
So I'm just wondering, you mentioned that in your opportunity economy, a child tax credit, but that's just one part of an ecosystem. Please tell us, what plans will you propose to guarantee that families can actually afford childcare and elder care?
So to your point, it is sadly the state of affairs in our country that working people often have to decide to either be able to work or be able to afford childcare. Like they can't afford childcare and actually do the work that they want to do because it's too expensive and it doesn't actually level out in terms of the expense versus the income. My plan is that no working family should pay more than 7% of their income in childcare. Because I know that when you talk about the return on that investment, allowing people to work, allowing people to pursue their dreams in terms of how they want to work, where they want to work, benefits us all. It strengthens the entire economy. We saw, for example, during the pandemic what happened. And it sadly has dissipated as a conversation that we need to resuscitate, which is the number of women that had to leave the workforce because of a lack of childcare and home health care. And so many of our families, and in particular women, end up carrying the responsibility. Men do too, of course. What we call people who are in the sandwich generation.
Exactly.
Who have young children and are also taking care of their parents. And it is just absolutely too expensive for them to be able to work and do that. So my plan is not only about 7% of income for working people for childcare, but also we need to do better for our childcare providers and our home healthcare providers in terms of ensuring that they receive the wages that they deserve based on the dignity of their work. I have spent time with home healthcare providers, and their work is some of the most taxing work you can imagine. And I actually, when my mother was sick with cancer, did a lot in terms of taking care of her. And the work that is about taking care of a loved one, in particular an elder, is extraordinarily heavy in terms of the emotional toll, the time it takes, and we do it because that is what we do, but not everyone has the ability to take time from work to do it, and they need help, and we need to make sure we have home health care workers that can help them. But I want to also get back to the earlier point that you made about extending the child tax credit. So part of my new approach is we need to expand the child tax credit. And so part of my plan that is under an opportunity economy is to extend and expand the child tax credit to $6,000 so that young families in particular, for the first year of their child's life, which is an extraordinarily important time in their development, have the resources to be able to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy children's clothing, and not have to worry about whether they're going to be able to meet their other needs. And I don't need to remind anybody here, especially these esteemed journalists, but when we expanded the child tax credit a couple years ago, we reduced Black child poverty by half. And so again, if you talk about the benefit and if you think about the
Anybody notice the difference with the rhetoric? Because they told us that they cut child poverty in half. They didn't say Black child poverty. So I'm going to have to look up those numbers. Was it all children poverty was cut in half, or was it just Black child poverty? She said Black child poverty. So I need to check that out.
benefit to the economy overall, it strengthens our economy to do things like pay attention to affordable child care, affordable home health care, and extending the child tax credit.
Madam Vice President.
Okay, so I think part of the problem that Kamala is going to run into is that she doesn't explain how she's going to do those things. And this has come up even with David Weigel, which I'll show you in just a second. Even David Weigel brings it up where he's like, yeah, about that. But this woman here, and I'll get to the reparations part in just a second. This woman here puts it very well. And this is what the message that I think a lot of us have been trying to scream at the top of our lungs, that when it comes to Kamala Harris, she has a tendency not to really just get to the point. And some of us can fall asleepy, right? Just get to the point. This is something I think Obama was really good at. He was good at getting to the point and at the same time showing empathy and being charismatic. And I think that's something that probably takes practice if you don't have it naturally. But this woman put the nail right on the head. Listen to what she said. She said, this is a message for Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, you are as fake as press-on nails, and I can see right through you. Let me help you out with something, because maybe somebody must not have told you. On TV and on every interview, giving the same tired answer. So let me just help you out. When you are asked a question, why don't you try answering the question? People are not stupid. We can tell when you're dancing around the issue instead of answering the question. When you're asked, are people better off now or during Donald Trump's presidency? When you're asked about the border or your policies on immigration, answer the question. We don't care about your middle class upbringing. We don't care that your mama had to save up to buy a house. We don't care about your summer job at McDonald's. We don't care about the lawns of the neighborhood that you lived in and how everybody took care of their lawn. That does not matter to me, and it doesn't matter to anybody else. I want you to answer the question. Because if people, my mind is already made up too, Kamala, because I can see right through you and I know that you fake. But for somebody else whose mind is not made up, let me just help you out. Answer the question so that they can decide between you and your opponent. I don't know if you're just trying to paint him as the villain and try to skate by to be like you the hero or a nice person. We don't care about that. Because being a hero and voting for the nice person is not what pays the bills. You understand what I'm saying? We can see through you. And that fake Black accent that you keep doing, girl, you need to stop. Because you know good and well that you ain't got no Black accent. You know good and well that you was born from San Francisco and in Canada. Where you get that Black accent from? Stop doing that trying to be relatable. This does not make you relatable. It makes you look fake. And those of us like me, we can see through that. We can see through that. We can see through every interview that you do, that instead of answering the questions that are on the minds of the millions of American people who have the power to elect you to the highest office in the land, you're dancing around the issue. And you want to talk about how you was born a middle-class kid and how your mother had to save up to buy a house. I don't care, Kamala. So just to recap, stop dancing around the issue. Answer the question. If you're going to do an interview, answer a question that you are asked at the interview.
So, yeah, I think that's something that we've been trying to say over and over. Just get to the point. because you're losing people in the word salad. Granted, listen, some people are going to support Kamala anyway because they're just like, look, anybody but Trump, so they're going to support her anyway, regardless if she has plans or not. But it gives people the impression that you're not confident in what you're saying. It gives people the impression that you don't know what you're doing and that you're not ready for this. I'm just keeping it real. And listen, this was advice I got from people I worked with before. Like, I wasn't always this, me like this, like these are things that I had to learn as I grew professionally, particularly in higher ed. Like, these are things that advice that I was given about how to just get to the point and don't beat around the bush and how to have confidence and stuff like that. But the impression that I get from Kamala Harris, particularly when we get to this part right here, when she has these interviews, these discussions, it gives me the impression that she's not confident. Now, I didn't see that when she was on the debate stage, and I didn't see that when she was at the DNC convention. She seemed pretty confident. But when she has these interviews, it gives me the impression that you don't really know and that you don't believe what you're saying yourself. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, it's true. We don't really need to hear that you grew up middle class and all. You said this over and over and over. It sounds like a script. This is another part of the interview I want to address as well.
Last month, you eulogized Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Yeah.
Jackson Lee's signature bill, one of a few, was H.R. 40, which would create a commission to study the history of U.S. slavery and study the issue of reparations. She introduced H.R. 40 every session of Congress, taking up the mantle from Congressman John Conyers. This is a bill that you have co-sponsored as a U.S. Senator. Yet, this has, despite the fact that this has been, similar commissions have been created on the state level and on the local level, is yet to pass in Congress, let alone come out of committee. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and other advocates have called for President Biden to take executive action to create this commission. Would you, as president, take executive action to create this commission, or do you believe that it should happen in Congress?
On the issue of what we need to do going forward, look, first of all, we just need to speak truth about history, in spite of the fact that some people are trying to erase history and try and teach our children otherwise. We need to speak truth about the generational impact of our history, in terms of the generational impact of slavery, the generational impact of redlining, of Jim Crow law. I could go on and on and on. These are facts that have had impact. And we need to speak truth about it. And we need to speak truth about it in a way that is about deriving solutions. And frankly, I think that we, and part of that is studying it to figure out exactly what we need to do. But
let me pause here for just a second. First of all, people have been speaking truth about it for years, Kamala. In fact, you should be meeting with those people. You should meet with ADOS. You should meet with reparations activists, just like other presidential candidates have done. I think that is a must. That should happen. Two, I told you guys before about the study. A study is a stonewall tactic. Oftentimes when a bill goes to a study, it goes there to die. People really got to get that. Got to understand that. So the study has been done multiple times. Maybe Kamala Harris needs to read Dr. Sandy Darity's book, From Here to Equality. Maybe someone need to send that to Kamala Harris and show she can see the data and the studies that have been done. But that is a stonewall tactic, because let me tell you something. All those other policies that she mentioned, things that she wants to do, she didn't stop and say, we need to study it. We need to look into this. We need to look into that. No, they just do it. It's only a study is needed when it comes to this particular topic. And what Kamala Harris and other politicians have to know is that Black people in this country in particular, outside of the Democrat shills who are just going to support Democrat candidate regardless who they are, I'm not talking about the Black boule. The average Black American in this country does not vote. The average Black American in this country is tired of being at the bottom. They are tired of being ignored. They are tired of seeing other groups being propped up or other groups getting benefits and getting their demands from the Democratic Party. And Black Americans are constantly being looked over. So Kamala Harris, you said that you got to do what you can to earn Black men, to earn the Black male vote. You can start with that by having this conversation, by meeting with them and coming up with a real plan to implement reparations. Because this whole you got to study thing, you can't get by with that with our community anymore. There needs to be a study. We've been hearing about studies for decades. When it come to other groups, you ain't do no damn study. You guys just gave them what they needed. So I think this is a very important conversation. And I applaud people like Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, Dr. Sandy Darity for raising the issue and honestly bringing it to a popularity. Because the reality is, this has been ignored for so long. But as she goes on, you're going to see she doesn't really know what reparations is. Watch this.
Part of what we can do right now is, for example, what I'm talking about in terms of building an opportunity economy, which is addressing explicitly the obstacles that historically and currently exist and dealing with them.
But do you have a position on whether that should happen, this commission should happen through executive order or via Congress?
I think Congress ultimately will have the ability to do this work. I'm not discounting the importance of any executive action, but ultimately Congress. Because if you're going to talk about it in any substantial way, there will be hearings, there will be a level of public education and dialogue that, and I think that was part of the spirit behind the congressional action thus far, to ensure that everyone can participate in this conversation in a way that elevates knowledge about history and the reference points that have that are the impetus of this conversation.
You've said you support.
We already know this. We already know the history. See, Kamala Harris thinks that reparations would include some of the economic policies that she wants to do. That's not what reparations means. Reparations is a debt that's owed. It's the 40 acres and a mule, which obviously, is a lot higher today. But that she's trying to mix these things together. You can't mix them together. You're two different things. And you can't mix together racial justice with reparations. Those are two different things. One is a debt that is owed. So again, I employ Kamala Harris to sit down and have this conversation with ADOS members. There's an ADOS convention in October. Will Kamala Harris be there? You see what I mean? This is a question. Was Joe Biden there? What Democrat politicians are going to these events and talking to that community? The last part here is gun control. This one gets a little spicy.
An assault weapons ban and universal background checks. And we actually learned during the debate that you are a gun owner. Mm-hmm. But in cities like Philadelphia, handguns are responsible for most homicides and violent crime. The most recent FBI data shows handguns were involved in 59% of murders in our country. How will you address the issue of the use of handguns? Because a push for an assault weapons ban only addresses a significant but small part of the problem.
So, first of all, yes, I am a gun owner, and Tim Walz is a gun owner, and we're not trying to take anybody's guns away from them. But we do need an assault weapons ban. Assault weapons are designed to kill a lot of human beings quickly,
yes,
and have no place, and
yes.
have no place, I'm going to get to it.
Yes.
And have no place on the streets of a civil society. We need universal background checks, which, to your point about handguns, is about saying that it is just reasonable to want reasonable gun safety laws that say we should do background checks that we ought to know. It's just reasonable. You might want to know before someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You might just want to know.
And respectfully, we do understand that.
But you're asking
yes.
about...
I'm asking specifically about handguns.
See, this is another example where Kamala is telling them, you're telling people things we already know. They're asking, what are you going to do about it? Do you guys see the problem? And it's been a continuing factor in her interviews. And she's not the only politician that does this. Other politicians do it too. But when someone's out there asking you, what are you going to do about it? They're not asking you what is happening right now. She already told you what is happening right now. So
because many of those handguns aren't
Universal
purchased in
background
places.
checks
Yes.
apply to handguns.
Yes.
They do.
But in
And
many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago about the gun show loophole and why we need to close that. Because what ends up happening is that gun shows at flea markets, gun dealers are not, under existing law in the past, required to register their sales. And so you are exactly right that a lot of homicides, for example, a good number of them, I don't have the statistic in front of my mind, are committed with illegally purchased guns. And that's why we need to address each entry point in the issue, including universal background checks, closing the gun show loophole, and what we need to do as a general matter to focus not only on reaction to crime, but prevention of crime.
January 6th.
So again, those are things that we already know. And I want to say something in reference to the handguns. I'm sorry, what she's talking about with these gun shows and everything. But the reality is, if I went to the hood tomorrow, pretty much willing to bet most people did not get those guns from a gun show. Just keeping it real. Now, there was something somebody noticed, and this, I didn't catch this at first. So shout out to JV, not to be confused with JB. Trump's exit of the NABJ after talking with somewhat of a hostile panel. I remember that. I covered that on here too. Compared to Kamala's exit after she talked with a rather friendly panel. Notice any differences? So let's show both of them, okay?
Thank you. NABJ will email about details regarding the conversation with Vice President Kamala Harris.
I just have to mute it because of the music. But this was after Trump had his interview with the NABJ. And you guys remember that conversation was pretty heated. So they want to show you something. They want to show you their exit. So this is Donald Trump exiting after he interviewed with them. So shaking hands and all that jazz, giving the fist to the people in the audience, and then standing there for a second and then walking away. Now, watch this. When we look at Kamala's exit, this is funny. Shaking hands. She couldn't get out of there fast enough. Hold on. Watch. She was like, I'm not, bye. She couldn't get out there fast enough. Oh, hold on. So now you have to see the expressions on their face. This part is funny too. So right after she exited the stage, let's go right here. Did you see how they looked at each other? Watch. Yes, he pointed that out, which again, like I said, I didn't catch that the first time around, but that was really pretty funny there. But even Dave Weigel, he mentioned something about this, something that he noticed too with Kamala Harris. He said she's not answering the questions. Again, he's typically pro-Democrat. Listen.
When you listen to Kamala Harris and what she will do, you can almost start a drinking game every time she says small businesses. Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example.
Part of my plan under my economic opportunity plan going forward is that right now, startup entrepreneurs, small businesses only get a tax deduction of $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So I'm expanding that to $50,000. Understanding, again, that when people have the opportunity to have the resources to get started, they're going to put the good ideas, they're going to put the hard work into it.
Describe the politics of that.
When she says that, she also talks about being a middle-class kid. That's also at the front of her answers. If you look at the interviews they've been doing with local media, and they've opened up a bit more since the debate, the first question is often, what are you going to do to lower prices? Which is a very hard question for an incumbent party to answer. And it has implications that are very Trumpian. It is, Trump says he's going to do mass deportation. That'll decrease demand. Trump says he'll explore more energy. That'll decrease energy costs. Democrats can point to the fact that inflation is actually, it was bad 2 years ago. It's not now. What people want to hear is, how do you make the prices go down? So everything she says is something realistic that could survive a fact check that answers a very hard question. There is not a plan to say that we're going to lower the cost of your grocery bill to what it was in 2019. There was a pandemic. There was a money supply inflation. You can't hit the button that makes that go away. But Trump has an answer that gets him through these questions. And Harris, I think, with a different set of incentives and a different relationship to something she can back up in a policy paper, she doesn't have an answer. So she goes to a larger, well, imagine a future where there are more businesses and this starts to ameliorate.
So did everybody hear what he said? He said she doesn't have an answer. I was surprised that came from him. But yeah, this is the reality, folks. I think the problem that Kamala Harris runs into is the fact that she is a part of the current administration. So the reality is everything that happened under her administration that's on the scrutiny table for people, she's going to have to take that heat because it's her administration. She was a part of it. Versus if we would have had an open Dem primary, which is what people were asking for. And let's say she did not choose to run. It was like, no, I don't know if I want to do this. Let's say that they did go with someone like a Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom wouldn't have to take the heat of the current administration because he wasn't a part of it. The problem that Kamala Harris runs into is that she is a part of that administration. So she does have to take that heat. Also come up with plans that are going to get people out of this mess, even though her administration is part of the mess. So she's in a different position. And the reality is, this is why commentators continue to tell Kamala Harris that you need to differentiate yourself from Joe Biden. But I think what we've seen is there really isn't that much different between her and Joe Biden when we look at the policies. A lot of these things on her website is similar to what Joe Biden had on his website, with the exception of her wanting to build more homes, right? So that is the risk that they took when they decided to select the candidate and not have people vote for a candidate in the primary. And there were people primarying Joe Biden, and the Democratic Party decided that they were not going to have a debate and that they were not going to have a real, competitive primary, that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee, and that was it. And then Joe Biden, obviously had to drop out. So this is what you're stuck with. And this is why Barack Obama wanted to have an open primary and was not ready to endorse Kamala Harris. Because again, yes, you are a part of the current administration. The genocide in Gaza, people are going to tie that to you. Everything that happened under the Biden-Harris administration that people have problem with, they are going to tie that to Kamala Harris. It's just a reality. But that's what the Democratic Party wanted, right?